From the Media Factory in the south end of Burlington, Vermont, this is 99.3 FM WBTV-LP Burlington, streaming online at 99.3wbtv.org. And this program is made possible in part by Burlington Telecom's Lifeline program, promoting a digitally inclusive community by helping Burlington residents afford the internet tools they need to reach their full potential. Learn more at burlingtontelecom.com, and please enjoy another episode of Steam Lab.
Each week, we'll explore topics relating to science, technology, engineering, art, and the mathematics. Our mission is to entertain, engage, and educate the Burlington community. Wait, oh, the world! Welcome to Steam Lab. I'm your host, Engineer Phil, and across the way from me is Dr. Kyle.
Hello.
And it's been a really long time.
It's been a hot minute since we've been in here live.
Hot minute, more like a hot month.
My gosh. This is not a pre-recording. It is June the 16th, 2019. You are listening to Real Time Kyle and Philip.
It's true. It's true. It's really true. And we've been busy. Things have been happening in the Peterson household. We've moved.
This is true.
We've built basements. We've painted.
I've quit my job.
Yeah, Kyle's out of work.
Yeah,
he's not homeless because he lives with us. And my daughter graduated. I almost said our daughter, like it's yours and my child.
Yeah, Nora is not my child.
Kyle, that would be very weird.
Quite the limited age gap.
Yeah, I would say that biologically impossible.
I would concur.
Yes. So, but here we are. We're in the studio, and we are on YouTube Live right now.
Hello, YouTube.
And I will try and post some links. And we're on VCam, but not live.
Go ahead,
make your joke.
I'll make my classic joke. On VCam sometime at 3 a.m. on a Thursday. Who knows?
All right, here we go. And we're also primetime on VCam. And obviously we're here, 99.3 FM, WBTV-LP, and streaming online. So, and we got links and Facebook.com/SteamLabVT and all of that. And this week,
we're talking about a Kyle story.
Yeah, finally. It's only been like 3 months.
Been a while since I've done my homework.
Yeah, I would say you were due for it. And it is, by the way, it is Father's Day. And so I'd like to
go hug your dad.
Yeah, right. I had a chance to see him this morning. My parents came out and visited for Nora's graduation. And I got to see my dad this morning. And I drove him to Boston. So that's what he got for Father's Day.
Happy birthday.
And then I drove back here.
Birthday. Happy Father's Day, Dad.
You got it. There you go. So, and we just exchanged like a, hey, Dad, happy Father's Day. And he said the same thing to me. So there you go. Hey, they're happy dads, happy grads.
I called my dad, gave him, spoke to him and all that. So,
nice.
Yeah. Anyway.
So Chernobyl.
Chernobyl is the topic of choice today.
Which is interesting because the last time we were in the studio, it was Sheila and I, and we talked about the Titanic disaster.
We're just disaster focused.
Well, it seems very topical right now, given that the HBO show
and that's
of the same name.
Why I'm into it, I guess. I definitely will admit that I watched the whole thing and was enthralled. And did a lot of research and looking into it besides that and listening to podcasts and things, and think it's just a really interesting story,
right?
Itself. It's still problematic to this day, and when you really break it down, there's a whole bunch of different layers to kind of like piece apart, and almost at the point we need like 3 episodes of our show to talk about the whole
dedicate
thing.
to this
exactly. There's so many like pieces to the puzzle that was this disaster. It's really, really interesting.
Well, okay, so you put it that way. There is an element
of this that is the disaster element. And there is the, like, what happens to you as your body gets exploded. No, you know what? We're not doing that.
No, yeah, I really focus on the like radiation sickness aspect of it in the story because, you know, I mean, yes, it's gross and, you know, it's kind of like, yeah, radiation does some horrendous things to you, but that's not really the main focus.
So let's
yeah.
It's hard for most people to see any silver lining in a nuclear disaster. However, while you'd never be able to subject animals and humans to these levels of radiation in a designed experiment, we can study
Oh yeah, it taught
the
us
effects of the animals here and compare them to the outside of the, what do you call it, a zone?
exclusion zone.
Right.
Yeah.
And this was a large part of the topic, or this is a large, I imagine, of the topic that we're going to discuss here today. And I'm not going to spoil it because guess what?
I got a whole bunch of pages that I didn't share with Philip.
I can't spoil anything. So I'm really just here to be a, you know, in radio speak, I'm here to be a laugh box.
Perfect. Bring some light to this story.
I'm going to try.
It's pretty.
I'm going to try.
dark
I do have
at
it for your
sometimes.
information.
Yeah, we'll get there.
We'll get there.
Alrighty.
Or maybe we won't.
Oh, you will. Who
All right,
knows?
everybody settle in.
Sit back.
Yeah, it's story time.
Pop your cap on your Snapple or
Pop
seltzer
your
or
popcorn
iced
with
tea.
your radiation making machines.
Oh yeah. Put your microwaves.
It's a radiation machine.
On April 26th,
Oh boy, here we go.
1986, at 1:23 a.m. and 45 seconds, reactor number 4 at the Vladimir I. Lenin nuclear power plant in the Soviet Union near the city of Pripyat in present-day Ukraine suffers a catastrophic failure and explodes. The world would not know for another 48 hours. 2 years to the day after the incident, Valery Legasov, the lead scientist in charge of securing the site and halting and containing the spread of radiation from the now exposed core, hangs himself in his own apartment.
Oh no.
This
What?
is the story of the accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant.
You're hitting me right between the eyes with that one.
Oh, yeah,
I didn't
I know.
know that part.
Yeah, and like I said, there's a lot of this story that people kind of like. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of misinformation out there. But anyway,
He hung himself?
We'll get there. We'll get there. We'll get. I'm setting, you know, right off the bat, setting a timeline. Now we'll get there. Trust me.
What's his name?
Valery. Don't look it up.
I'm not looking anything up.
No, Valery Legasov. So is the man's name.
And anyways, Jesus.
Before delving into the accident, it's worth discussing the city of Pripyat, which that was so directly impacted by this whole thing. Pre-Chernobyl, Pripyat was a well-designed, actually highly functioning, and even by Soviet standards, a nice place to live for a communist country. It consisted of many brutalistic apartment buildings to house brutalistic architectural themed is how this thing looked.
Right, okay.
Like if you see pictures of Pripyat, it's actually pretty haunting to look at now. But in the time before the accident occurred, it was actually this like pretty like well-structured city. I mean, there's like these towering big concrete apartment blocks that kind of stretch into the sky.
I see. So this is like mid-century modern.
Yeah,
Brutalist architecture is a lot of straight lines, a lot of glass, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So
yes.
maybe I get the architecture term wrong. But it housed nearly 50,000 people. It had a large hospital. It had an amusement park. It had a local gymnasium and a large recreational swimming pool open to all residents of the community.
Sounds
These were
great.
things that, you know, weren't common in a lot of areas of the USSR at the time. But
Sounds
this city
great.
was, you know, next to a power plant. Chernobyl was a highly functioning plant. It employed a lot of the population. You know, it brought in a lot of income and made the city, you know, a nice, you know, pretty nice place by communist standards.
It's funny when you say income because I think communism and I think who's got an
I know,
income?
who's got an income? But this was all going to change in the days following the explosion. Chernobyl was a nuclear power plant that utilized a reactor of Soviet design called an RBMK reactor. Before we get into it, it's worth explaining the basic principle behind this reactor's functioning in order to really understand kind of what happened on the morning of April 26th. An RBMK reactor is cooled by water. This is important. The basic process is this. The nuclear reaction.
like a radiator.
Like a radiator. The nuclear reaction inside the core of the reactor generates heat. This reaction is cooled by a constant flow of water through the core. And as this water flows through the core, it's turned into steam, which is captured, and then in turn spins a turbine. And this turbine spinning is what generates electricity. It's as simple as that. Nuclear reaction is continuously hot. Water flows in to cool it to keep from overheating. That water turns to steam. Steam spins a turbine. Turbine makes electricity. Therefore, it can be said that this form of equilibrium exists between the core and the coolant water to allow the reactor to continuously generate power for 24 hours a day. Right? So that's nuclear reactor in like very simplistic terms. But this is the design of the Soviet reactors. So it's worth pausing here a little bit to discuss the state of the Soviet Union at this time as well. The Soviet government put emphasis on the worker, right? It's the Workers' Party in the USSR. It's the rebellion of, the workers, and, the whole Bolshevik rebellion, if you kind of bring it back, was, this whole rise of the lay people who are taking control of the government. And Mr. Joe Schmo, that was a shoemaker, is now in charge of like the city of X.
Well,
right?
ideally. But that's
No,
not
but
the
it's
case. I mean,
not
come on.
necessarily the case. But there's a lot of emphasis on the worker and upward mobility in society, especially if you're already up there, right? So those in positions of power are promoted to higher ranks based on performance, meeting deadlines, and other factors worthy of recognition. And because high status meant more power and better quality of life, those in management positions sought every opportunity to advance, sometimes without regard for the cost. So now reactor number 4 at Chernobyl went into operation on December 20th, 1983, nearly 3 years prior to the incident. It was stated on its completion that all safety tests were completed and documentation was signed by plant director Viktor Brukhanov. As a result of finishing the work before the end of the year, Brukhanov, along with chief engineer Nikolai Fomin and deputy chief engineer Anatoly Dyatlov, were awarded and praised. And remember these guys' names. They're going to come back.
Can I say something? I'm impressed that you can pronounce these
I know.
names. Because how can I remember these names?
We'll get there.
I'm sorry, it's not Frank and
you'll
Ted
hear,
and,
I know.
And
I pardon there's some of this pronunciation I will
I'm just being
slaughter.
honest. Like, here's the thing. I'm not Russian. I'm not Soviet. I'm not, whatever
Yeah.
the Ukrainian or so.
neither am I.
I don't want to offend anybody out there that is. We're doing our best. We're dumb Americans.
Exactly. So
And we
if
don't know
I'm-
how to pronounce any of this stuff.
If there's a Russian speaker out there that,
Feel free to correct
free to
us.
comment.
Facebook.com/SteamLabVT.
yeah. But the certification of this reactor was a lie. And the heads of the plant knew it. In fact, the reactor was operational for nearly 3 years without a critical safety feature in place.
Oh, no.
Thus, in one of history's greatest ironies, the disaster at Chernobyl began with a safety test.
Can I say this real quick?
Yes.
If you out there are listening to this and going, yeah, communism, that's what happens. Dude, hello, the Boeing MAX airplanes.
Yeah.
It happens in America too.
Oh, yeah.
Every country, people try and cover this stuff up because of ego, because of fear that they're going to lose their job. If you got a mistake and you find a mistake at your job, you got to point it out.
Oh, yeah.
You got to say something. You can't just sit back and go like, everything's cool. Or what's that one picture with the dog and the burning
This is
house?
everything
With
is
the
fine.
everything
Yeah.
is fine. Everything's fine. The house is on fire, but everything's fine. You got to take care of it.
True. You're gonna hear
it's
a lot.
not just-
You're gonna hear a lot of
It's
frustration
not,
with this.
it's not just communism here, people. I'm just pointing it out quick.
Sit back and prepare.
I'm ready.
So the question was this: what happens if a nuclear power plant loses power, and the pumps that push the coolant water through the core are unable to function?
Oh, well.
Without water, the core overheats, the fuel melts down, and the result is a nuclear disaster. So it's really important to keep this water moving, right? Now, the proposed solution to this was 3 diesel fuel backup generators, which would run the pumps in the event of a critical power failure. However, the generators could turn on within 15 seconds of a power loss, but they took an additional 60 seconds to reach the speed required to power the pumps. Now, this minute and a half gap between the initial pump loss and the delayed restart was deemed unacceptable by safety standards. Now, this test that we're talking about was designed to bridge this gap in the pump functioning. So the theory was sound. The theory was that if the reactor lost power, the turbine that it was spinning would still take some time to wind down to a stop.
So we keep pumping.
So the pumps want to keep pumping, but the pumps are pumping water, which is turning to steam, which is spinning a turbine to generate electricity.
Sure.
Right.
Understood.
But
Because it's heat.
because it's heat. So,
Yeah.
but this turbine is spinning at a high rate of speed because of the steam, and even when the whole thing stops, the turbine's still spinning and it's still producing power. So it was hypothesized that the electricity being generated from the slowing turbine could be used to power the pumps for the minute gap before the generators could take over the critical function. So to test this theory, because they have to test it, because this is all a hypothesis that it'll work as expected, unless you don't want to be wrong in the moment of a power failure and have a reactor blow up, right? So to test this theory,
It's not just a theory.
yeah.
It's happening.
Yeah, it's happening. Well, stay tuned. To test this theory, you have to place the reactor in a reduced power mode of 700 megawatts to simulate a blackout condition. Then, the turbines are turned off, and their electrical output is measured to determine if there is enough water to power the pumps.
So they were running a test?
They're running a test.
Oh, no.
That's why I said the greatest irony is that
They're
this
running a
whole
safety
accident
test.
started while running a safety test.
Oh, geez.
Philip, pay attention, man. That was like a zinger line.
No, I got you, man. But
So-
but hey, look, I'm playing
I know.
Joe Dummy out there. I had to overreact, Kyle. You know what I mean?
I know.
Because that's
I know.
we're pretending that I'm on the couch.
I got you.
listening to- Okay.
I got you. So
Oh my gosh, they were running a test. I can't believe it.
The science behind this is sound, but the plant operators had tried 3 times in the 2.5 years of the reactor's life to complete this test.
And never did.
But all of them were unsuccessful for one reason or another. The
They
fourth,
ran out of time.
or it just didn't work, and they couldn't sign it off.
And 1:30 in the morning is a great time to do this test.
Oh, we'll get to why. The fourth and final test was set for April 25th, 1986.
At 1:30 in the morning.
No. By noon on April 25th,
I see.
the reactor power output was gradually reduced from its normal output of 3,200 megawatts down to half power of 1,600 megawatts and was stable for the test to be conducted by the day shift workers as planned.
Sure.
However, a different power station in Kyiv goes down that afternoon, and the electrical grid controller calls Chernobyl and says you need to halt your reactor shutdown because we need to meet the needs of the evening demand on the electrical grid. So he says, stop the shutdown. We can't afford you to turn off your reactor. We won't have enough power to get through the night because this other plant failed. However, where is it? Therefore, the test was postponed by those guys I named earlier, Brukhanov, Fomin, and Dyatlov, said, we have to get this done. I don't care that it's delayed. We're doing it anyway. We'll do it later. So the test was postponed until 11 o'clock that night, when Chernobyl was given the go-ahead to resume its shutdown process.
Oh, God.
However, this delay has a cascading effect.
I love that term.
The test was planned to be performed by the day shift. Due to the delay, the day shift was long gone by 11 p.m. The evening shift was preparing to leave, and the night shift came on at midnight, already well into the test itself. The night shift had little time to prepare for this test and was untrained in the protocols to carry it out because they were never supposed to be doing it, right? So these guys coming in for the night shift were just supposed to be moderating a low-powered reactor and bringing it back up to speed. It should have been long done by then, right? So there was no preparation of the people that were coming in at midnight to run this test. Now, however, the test was being overseen by Deputy Chief Engineer Dyatlov, and as he held the highest rank, his orders could not be overridden by the night shift engineers, no matter how much they would have objected. In later trials, Dyatlov would be sentenced to 10 years in prison for the role that his oversight and direction played in the incident.
That doesn't make any sense to me. I'm sorry, I'm pointing it out.
What?
I don't think that's necessarily his...
Oh, just wait.
Why, though?
Well, just trust me on this.
I mean, he said that they had to run the test.
Oh, he's saying, yeah, the plant director, they could have postponed again once this delay happened, but they're pushing it forward.
Now, can I play the guy on the couch going, well, blah, blah, blah. He said run the test, and he's trying to do his job. And
play devil's advocate, and then let me keep talking, and then I think you're going to get on my side by the end of it.
Okay, but
Trust me.
think of that real quick. This
Yeah.
guy, he said we're going to run the test anyways because we got to run the test.
Yeah. This is what he's doing. He's saying, we got to run it because we got to run it. We're behind schedule. We should have done this. We
Sure.
illegally signed this paperwork. I'm in charge, and my name's on the line. And also, if we get it done, I'll get a promotion, right?
Okay, you're
we go.
giving me a little door opening
Get
there.
the little door opening.
Okay, small one.
Small.
Still
So
got to
now-
run the test.
Still going to run the test.
Continue.
Alexander Akimov was the acting chief of the night shift, and Leonid Totinov was the operator responsible for the reactor's operation, including the removal of reactor control rods. We'll get to what those are in a moment. Totinov was 25 years old and had been working independently for just 3 months and in the plant for a total of 4. So this is a very new guy to this whole thing, and he's in charge of this.
And he hasn't been trained, I suppose.
Has not been trained. Brand new.
Oh, man.
The instructions he received he had never seen before, and some things were literally crossed off from previous tests. So he was given this whole packet of instructions, and half of the stuff in there is like redlined through. He's got no idea if that means don't do it, if that means do it anyway, if that was like a past test, they took it out and then they did it in a later test, right? This guy's got no idea. He's foreign instructions to him. Thus, the delay had created the first human problem needed to cause the meltdown. There was also a scientific problem created by the delay.
Okay.
But to understand this, we must first break down what goes on inside the core of a nuclear reactor. So there are essentially two things happening inside a nuclear reactor. The reactivity, which generates power.
I bet you this is where Athena pops something up on the screen.
Yes. It either goes up or it goes down. That's it. That's it. The whole thing.
It's a balance.
It's a balance. And various factors influence the reaction in one of these two ways. In a stable reactor, these factors balance out, and the reactivity is controlled to an optimal level to produce power at a safe rate.
Totally doing it. Athena is
Nice.
the bomb.
Athena's on the spot.
Yeah.
So the uranium fuel of this reactor, and bear with me, this is a little bit scientific, and I'm trying to break it down.
No, she's got a great. Let me show you the graphic she has.
Oh,
up.
perfect. Okay, we're getting
That's
there.
it.
All right. So Athena, you got Johnny on the spot with the pictures here. So the uranium fuel of the reactor is what drives this reaction.
Yes.
As the molecules collide and interact, reactivity goes up and will continue to do so indefinitely unless it's balanced out.
And mind you, with a nuclear reaction like this, if you don't control it,
It explodes. It goes
It's a bomb.
haywire real quick.
well, no, I mean it's like it's like Hiroshima, Nagasaki,
Quite literally a bomb.
mushroom cloud.
Yeah. So to balance this out, boron control rods are used. When they're inserted into the reactor, the boron slows the uranium reaction down when everything reacts together.
Oh boy,
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
you
no, it
have
makes sense.
The uranium increasing something, and you have
Sure.
the boron slowing it down.
Yeah.
Right, the control rod.
You're
slowing it
balancing
down.
the
You're
equation.
you're balancing the equation. There's a third factor also: the water pumped through the core itself. As it enters, it's taking heat out of the system and is further slowing down reactivity. So as we said before, when water enters this reactor, it turns into steam. Now, the steam is referred to as what's called a void. It's a bad thing. In the RBMK reactor, like Chernobyl, there exists something called a positive void coefficient.
Oh god.
So what this means is that the more steam that is present in the system, the higher the reactivity of this reaction. This creates a loop where the reaction continues to heat up,
And it's-
which produces more steam,
More heat.
which produces more heat, which produces more steam, etc.
This sounds like
Which is
when
that's just a vicious cycle.
when I'm steaming vegetables,
Right.
and the pan's gone out of control.
However, this still is balanced by something called the negative temperature coefficient,
Okay.
which means that as the nuclear fuel gets hotter, it gets less reactive.
Well, it's basic heat transfer.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
therefore, in a normal state reactor, the uranium fuel is increasing reactivity. The control rods and the water are decreasing reactivity. The steam being produced is increasing reactivity, and the rising in temperature is decreasing the reactivity. So everything is balanced.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Totally. I mean, it is a heat transfer.
It's all a heat transfer thing, keeping...
Look up Bernoulli's.
Yeah.
Bernoulli's equation.
There's factors that increase the heat. There's factors that decrease the heat.
Right.
And in normal functioning, these factors are operating together to balance things out. This is a normal functioning RBMK reactor.
Gotcha.
There's also another process occurring that is normally inconsequential to a normal state reactor. As uranium atoms decay, they decay into a new element. That element is xenon. Xenon reduces reactivity. Right?
Well, of course.
There's another thing that is
Yeah.
reducing reactivity. When the core is running at full power, it is able to burn the xenon away before it causes any problems.
I would love to see the stoichiometry on this.
I know. However, due to the delay, Reactor 4 has been running at half power for over 10 hours, allowing the xenon to build and to start to poison this core. It's called reactor core poisoning.
Oh no.
At 28 minutes,
And you got a guy behind the panel who hasn't been trained.
hasn't been trained,
And he has no idea what's
and
going
they don't
on.
know this. They're not thinking about
Oh
this.
no.
This is the scientific problem.
Because they let this go on for too long.
It's been running at half speed way too long,
Oh,
way
no.
longer than it should have, and the reactor is poisoning itself this whole time.
I know exactly what's happening.
At 28 minutes past midnight, on now April 26th,
Yeah. We're not on April 25th anymore.
the reactor is primed to slow down further to the 700 megawatts required to the test by inserting control rods. However, due to the xenon
It's already
buildup,
poisoned.
the core reaction, now it's being lowered even further, the core reaction continued to slow down without the operator making changes to the control rods.
Didn't have to.
they started to. So they start to change it, not thinking about it, and then they hit 700, and then it keeps dropping, is the problem. The reactor 4 drops down now to 500 megawatts of power. Then suddenly, because of the xenon poisoning, and it's hypothesized that Totenov screwed up and pulled the control right out too far, but all of a sudden it drops from it. They try to target it at 700, it drops to 500, and then it drops to just 30 megawatts, which is almost a complete shutdown state of the reactor.
Oh no!
Now, night shift engineers were trained to, in this event, completely shut down the reactor in this moment, but Dyatlov rejects this idea and pushes for the test to go on and insists that they
This is the guy that-
This is the chief and deputy chief engineer of the entire plant is now staring at his workers who are saying, we need to shut this thing down. Something's wrong. We don't know what it is. We need to follow protocol and stop. And he says,
said,
no,
"No.
I
Move
need you to
forward."
bring the power back up for the test.
No. And the reaction's going to be, I mean,
So keep it going, right? Can
can you imagine being one of these guys sitting at one
and-
of these desks, like hanging
And
out?
supposedly, according to the,
I'd be pooping in my pants.
According to the testimonies, that they push back on it a lot, and he basically threatened their jobs and their livelihoods, and said, if you don't do this, you won't work in Chernobyl, you won't work in another power plant, you won't find work in the entire
Oh,
Soviet
dude,
Union.
send this
I'll
guy.
make sure you are gone.
Send this guy to the gulag. You know what I'm saying? By the way, it's 6:26.
Oh, do you want to take a break?
I think-
this is a good moment to take a break.
Yeah.
So we've lowered to near catastrophic low levels.
I mean, I feel like we need
And
to,
we're
like,
about to up ramp. So why don't we take a moment
hang on a second.
and break things
I
down?
I need to breathe
got
for a
it.
second. I mean, but just take it curiously here.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine being one of these guys sitting at one of
this
these
room,
in
watching
this
this
room,
happen.
watching this occur,
And
knowing that
you're
you
doing
can't do anything?
You can't do anything. You're doing,
And
being
your
told to do
family
all the
lives like
wrong
right around the
things.
corner. All right. Well, hey,
All right.
on that happy note, let's take a quick break and then we'll come back and talk more about this disaster.
All right.
Welcome back to STEAM Lab, Science, Technology, Engineering, Art, and Mathematics. I'm your host, Engineer Phil, and across the way from me is Dr. Kyle.
Hello.
And this week, we're talking about Chernobyl, which is, I said that really happy, and I don't think I should have. Chernobyl. It's pretty topical given the show that just came out on HBO. Kyle has done a lot of research on it. Obviously, he's handwritten out his entire script for the show. I know nothing. I'm just reacting as we go. But I guess before we continue on here, there's a lot of good stuff going on here
announcements.
at the Media Factory. I don't have a list in front of me. What I would say is if you're interested in creating some radio, if you're interested in creating some television, if you're interested in, if you're sitting at home and you're thinking, man, I really want to make a documentary about whatever. I don't know, fiddle players or homeless people or something interesting, then you should do that. Oh, is Athena here?
we got a sign.
Athena. We got a sign. Summer at the Media Factory. Look at that.
Card.
Look at that poster. It looks really good.
Nice.
So, let's see. 5th of June. That's already gone by. Well, the 18th, video production with Canon. The 20th, editing with Adobe Premiere. The 26th, we got a gathering. We're supposed to go to that.
Oh.
We got a social gathering. The 27th, the Golden Hour, lighting at the Oakledge Park. July 9th, iMovie. July 12th, local music video showcase. There's so much stuff. There's a bunch of stuff. So check it out. Summertime at the Media Factory. Look up the Media Factory in Burlington. Look up RETN. Look up VCAM. Look up 99.3 FM, WBTV LP. And we're streaming online right now on YouTube Live.
Yep.
I posted a link on our Facebook page, facebook.com/SteamLabVT. And without further ado, let us continue. Kyle.
So let's recap before the
Yeah,
break.
I'm just going to hold this up for a second.
Our safety test required 700 megawatts of power for the reactor to be generating at.
Okay.
We've now, because of this delay, we're into the night shift. The night shift's
Chernobyl.
not trained on this, and the core has been poisoned. It's now dropped from 700 to 30 megawatts. 30.
Basically
30.
off.
Basically almost in a
Basically
total,
off.
complete shutdown state. And the chief engineer of this safety test is saying, bring it back up. We're doing it anyway. Even though all of the night shift people are saying, in this event, we're supposed to shut it down,
Gotta
bring
shut
it
it
back
down.
up.
It's not safe.
Because the protocol for this is, because what happens is this low power level, xenon is still being produced and created, and it's not burning away. And now the reaction is not even hot enough to produce steam.
Oh, boy.
So you have all these things piling up in the decrease column, and not anything in the increase except for the uranium itself, right? If you think about the balance, we're way out of balance right now. The scales are way tipped towards decrease.
Right.
It wants to be off.
And all the scientists and engineers that are there
Are saying, don't do it.
No, this is
Yeah.
what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And this guy who's the business
one
guy,
of the heads of the plant,
the
is
guy
saying,
who wants the promotion and he
Yeah.
doesn't want any egg on his face, is saying no, move forward with
move
it.
forward.
And yeah, I just want to point this out too. So many disasters have happened in just this situation.
Yeah.
Challenger. That was a disaster that happened because NASA said keep moving forward. The
Exactly.
bridge disaster we talked about.
Yeah.
The Titanic. All these disasters happened because of ego.
Common links.
Ego.
So now, to bring this up, which is not protocol, the system doesn't want to do this. The system even wants to, like the computer system in the whole reactor wants to shut the reactor down when it detects this. So to do this, the engineers had to disconnect the automatic control system, which is responsible for maintaining the control rod positions, and instead switch it to a manual mode to allow them to remove more rods and remove them further than the automated system would allow. So they've taken off their emergency system now. They're running on manual.
What's
They're not
the point?
doing. There's no backup because they have to.
Right.
They have to take it off in order to get this thing back up to speed in the state that it's in.
Right.
So now, the operators begin pulling control rods out in large numbers, and due to the lack of power rise, because this thing is very poisoned, right? They have to start completely removing control rods from the core. So normally, you're taking these rods when you're moving them up.
Sure.
You're just making less of them in the reactor, but there's still something in the
There's
reactor,
still
so they're doing
there.
something.
Still doing something.
But you're just moving them up so less boron's exposed to it, right?
And I guess I'd
But
point
now-
out all this is happening so fast.
Yeah.
You can't do engineering that way.
Exactly.
Engineering is not, because it's beyond science. Science is theoretical. Engineering is taking science and making it something that's happening. This is happening so quickly that the engineers don't have enough time to make the appropriate calculations. And we're talking about nuclear power
reactor.
here, a nuclear
Yeah.
reactor. So the stoichiometry, the equations, the engineering involved is in depth and serious, and there's not enough time.
Yeah.
So we're just doing stuff just to do it,
Just to
pretty
do it.
much,
So-
but not thinking.
So of the 211 control rods that were in reactor 4,
Oh man.
Akimov and Tochinov completely withdrew 205. Only 6 rods now remained in the reactor, which was insufficient to moderate the reaction
Right.
in the way that was intended. The fuel has now gone cold, so the negative temperature coefficient is also not slowing the reaction down. However, the xenon poisoning is still so strong that even in this state, the operators can only raise the power to 200 megawatts.
Oh boy.
The control rods are out. The emergency system is disconnected, and the only thing keeping the reactor in check is water and xenon. It is now 1 a.m., and Dyatlov still orders that the test move forward.
Dude. I mean, this is where the meltdown's going to occur. I mean, I don't need a compass to see the direction
You
of this.
see where this is going.
Folks, you don't need, I mean, my
But
goodness.
we're still going to keep going.
I'm not a nuclear engineer either.
No. At 1:05 a.m., water flow is increased per protocols of the test,
Oh, and the steam thing.
increasing the water levels in the reactor, which is now not hot enough to successfully turn into steam. Remember, this is supposed to be running at 700, and it's running at 200, right? So now
It's already increased to 200, though.
What it is at 200, but it's still not hot enough to turn into steam. So instead of this water they're pushing in, and this is going to become important in a moment.
Oh, I understand
Instead of
where
this
this is
water
going.
coming in and vaporizing, it comes in and sits. So now your core water level is rising.
Oh, my.
At 1:22 and 30 seconds, the automated computer system produces a report recommending the reactor be shut down. Dyatlov
How many
pushes ahead.
times? How many times do you...
Dyatlov pushes ahead. At 1:23 and 4 seconds, the test begins, and the pumps are turned off. The pumps stop moving water through the reactor. Bad news, right? The uranium fuel is now unchecked by water,
And no rods.
unchecked by control rods, and the balance swings in the other direction in less than a second.
Of course it does. It's a nuclear bomb.
In the core, water is being converted into steam and a void is forming. No fresh water is being moved in to replace it. Steam increases the reactivity, which increases heat, which increases steam, which increases reactivity.
You're making me nervous like a horror movie, dude.
The remaining xenon is burned off, and the core power continues to rise with nothing left to stop it. At 1:23 and 35 seconds,
Oh, jeez.
the power begins to surge out of control. In the control room of every nuclear reactor, there is a button that is meant for emergencies like this and will immediately shut down or scram the reactor. In the Soviet RBMK reactor, this button is called AZ5. When AZ5 is pressed, all of the control rods are inserted at once and the reaction is stopped. At 1:23 and 40 seconds, this button is pressed.
Uh-oh.
The engineers and Dyatlov himself believed this whole time they had the failsafe in AZ5, a way to shut everything down. However, in the circumstances created in the reactor that night, there was not, in fact, any way to shut everything down. The system had a fatal flaw. At 1:23 and 40 seconds, Akimov engages AZ5. The fully extracted boron control rods begin to move into the reactor and should slow down the reaction. However, the tips of the control rods are not made of boron. They are made of graphite, which accelerates reactivity.
Oh, awesome.
This fact was known to the Soviet state. It was known that this process occurs and that it's dangerous to hit this button at low reactor power when the control rods are fully removed. But it was cheaper to build the rods with graphite, and it was assumed these circumstances would not be met in a normal reactor. So this information was redacted and repressed. When the graphite tips enter the core, the already rising reaction skyrockets. Every molecule of water in the reactor, remember we've now increased the water level, instantly vaporizes to steam, which ruptures a series of fuel rod channels and halts the control rods in those channels in place. The graphite tips now remain fixed in position, endlessly accelerating the reaction and turning reactor 4 into a nuclear bomb.
Oh, my.
At 1:23 and 44 seconds, the steam continues to rupture fuel channels and freeze control rods, and power increases to a maximum. The exact level the power reached that night is unknown, but the final reading on the reactor, designed to operate at 3,200 megawatts, went above 33,000. At 1:23 and 45 seconds, the reactor explodes.
Well, yeah.
The lid is blown off and by the pressure inside, and oxygen rushes in. It combines with hydrogen and superheated graphite, and a second explosion occurs, setting the graphite on fire and ejecting control rods and graphite casings high into the air.
I mean,
The billowing smoke carries radioactive particles high into the sky to be spread far and wide, and a nuclear catastrophe has occurred.
how many people were killed instantly?
Actually, only one. One man was in the room when the core exploded. Remember, this is the night shift. There's not a lot of staff in the plant, too.
Sure. But I mean, like, it's not a full-on nuclear explosion.
No, it's a legit. It's a big explosion in the plant. But the bigger problem now is the core is on fire, and there's a billowing cloud of black smoke, and we've ejected irradiated graphite all over the place.
Right.
It's actually really cool. When Chernobyl exploded, they said
really
that,
cool.
that there was cool in a way. The reaction going on, so much nuclear energy was released in this moment that the air immediately above the reactor actually ionized, and it looked like this giant blue beam, like reaching into the heavens from the reactor. Supposedly,
we have that.
Maybe Athena can find
cool.
a picture of that of the way that Chernobyl supposedly looked.
I mean, did they have video?
So, well, I think they had cameras back then.
They had
So now,
back then.
all of this drama had unfolded over the course of about 13 hours. The reactor is blown up. But the real horror of the situation would be realized and dealt with over the course of many years to come. Immediately after the explosion, Dyatlov failed to believe that the reactor itself had exploded. Instead, he was convinced that it was a buildup of hydrogen in a cooling tank that had caused the explosion. A catastrophe for sure, but not nuclear in nature. So you have to remember where these people are, too.
Right.
Right? We hear Chernobyl and we hear, like, oh my God, giant nuclear explosion.
Right.
Pre-April 26, 1986, you hear Chernobyl, you think power plant, it's fine.
Yeah, right, exactly.
The Soviets did not believe that this reactor was designed in a way that should make it explode. And Dyatlov was doing a test that should have turned the whole thing off, pretty much, and didn't think that it was capable of exploding in this low power state. So he was saying it's not the reactor, it's some hydrogen tank. Where am I? But even... But meanwhile, people were like witnessing this, and there's actually like a lot of stories of this night. But even when plant workers who witnessed the explosion and knew that it was in fact the core, told these guys what had happened, Dyatlov and a few of them continued to deny it. There are many stories of these men who knew their fate and like knew they were exposed to tremendous levels of radiation
knew they were gonna die.
and knew they were dead. Because of this poisoning, and they will work hard to contain the situation in the plant throughout that first night. Some would just blindly follow orders. That night, Dyatlov, believing this was a hydrogen issue, ordered Akimov and Totenov to manually open water valves near the reactor in order to flood the core and keep it cool. Now, at this point, the core is gone. There's nothing to cool. It's exploded. It's everywhere. But he tells these two guys, you're going to go down to the basement below this reactor and turn on these pumps and cool it off.
There's nothing to cool off at this point.
No. But both men likely knew this action was in fact useless, but
Right.
they go anyway. They would die of acute radiation poisoning within the coming weeks.
Oh, God.
Next in line were the first responders. Firefighters arrived on scene before 2 a.m. and were only told that there was a fire in Reactor 4 and nothing more. They were not told of the dangers of the smoke and debris. First on scene was a firefighter brigade under the command of Vladimir Pravik, who would die of acute radiation sickness on May 9th.
Right.
A driver of this company was quoted explaining the situation that night. We arrived there at 10 or 15 minutes to 2 in the morning, he said. We saw graphite scattered about. Misha asked, "Is that graphite?" I kicked it away. But one of the firefighters on the other truck picked it up, picking up this chunk of graphite from a nuclear reactor core.
I mean, you're
It's hot, he said. The pieces of graphite were of different sizes. Some were big, some were small, enough to pick them up.
Oh, look at this.
We didn't know much. We didn't know much about radiation. Even those who worked there had no idea. There was no water left in the trucks. Misha filled a cistern and we aimed the water at the top. Then those boys who died went up to the roof. Vashchik, Kolya, and others, and Volodya Pravik. They went up the ladder and I never saw them again. Because they're clambering through the reactor core at this point. Another firefighter, when asked if they knew what they were dealing with radiation, stated, "Of course we knew. If we'd follow regulations, we would have never have gone near the reactor. But it was a moral obligation. It was our duty. We were like kamikaze."
Well, yeah.
By 5 a.m., the fires of the
And some of these guys survived.
Some of them did, but a lot of them won't. By 5 a.m., the fires on the roof of Reactor 4 would be extinguished at the cost of high levels of radiation exposure to the firefighters that night. The graphite core would continue to burn and send clouds of radioactive smoke billowing into the sky until May 10th.
Jeez. Weeks.
The Soviet Union would cover up the disaster at first. In part, it may have been because they didn't know the extent of the damage. Maybe. Equipment called dosimeters are used to measure radiation in units then called Rontgen. A lethal dose of radiation is 500 Rontgen over 5 hours. This is because radiation poisoning, the way it works is you can't just like when you're exposed, your body's exposed. Oops, I hit the microphone. When your body's exposed to radiation, it builds up.
Sure.
Right? It's not like you can be exposed, it'll wear off, and you can be exposed again.
Yeah.
You have a lifetime radiation exposure.
No. It's like you can't be halfway pregnant.
No, exactly.
You're all the way pregnant.
But as you're exposed to radiation, it doesn't leave your system; it stays in you.
That's what I'm saying.
Exactly.
It's the same. You got it.
So
now.
the principle is once you hit like 500 Rontgen over 5 hours, it's a certain critical value that it will kill you with radiation poisoning. That's it. You're done. Right? This is gotta be important. The worst hit areas of the reactor building are estimated to have reached 20,000 Rontgen per hour, or 5.6 Rontgen per second in some points. Unfortunately, the plant's dosimeter, capable of reading up to 1,000 Rontgen per second, was buried by the rubble. And the other dosimeters on hand were limited in reading a maximum value of 0.001 Rontgen per second, or 3.6 Rontgen per hour. Therefore, initially, all that these people's dosimeters were reading were just high, off scale. And plant chiefs believed the readings to be low and reported them initially at 3.6 Rontgen per hour. On April 28th, 2 days after the explosion, radiation alarms were triggered at a nuclear power plant in Sweden, over 600 miles from Chernobyl. They were able to determine the radiation was coming from elsewhere and contacted the Soviet Union, who were now forced to admit that a minor accident had occurred at the plant.
Yeah, right.
However, on April 27th, the Soviets had began to evacuate the city of Pripyat. Mind you, the explosion happened on the morning, early wee hours, April 26th.
1:30 in the morning.
They started evacuating people 36 hours later. And these are people who were living within a mile of the reactor.
Oh, my goodness.
Meanwhile, 2 days later, they're detecting radiation 600 miles away, high enough to set off alarms.
That's the beauty of our liturgical society.
Yes. And residents of Pripyat were initially told this was temporary. In actuality, they would never return to their homes.
Yeah, you're never going home.
The evacuation message sounded as follows. For the attention of the residents of Pripyat, the city council informs you that due to the accident at Chernobyl power station in the city of Pripyat, the radioactive conditions in the vicinity are deteriorating. The Communist Party, its officials, and the armed forces are taking necessary steps to combat this. Nevertheless, with the view to keep people as safe and healthy as possible, the children being top priority, we need to temporarily evacuate the citizens of the nearest towns of the Kyiv region. For these reasons, starting April 27th, 1986, at 2 o'clock, each apartment block will be able to have a bus at its disposal, supervised by the police and city officials. It is highly advisable to take your documents, some vital personal belongings, and a certain amount of food just in case with you. The senior executives of public and industrial facilities of the city has decided on the list of employees needed to stay in Pripyat to maintain these facilities in good working order. All houses will be guarded by the police during the evacuation period. Comrades, leaving your residence temporarily, make sure you have turned off lights, electrical equipment, and water, and shut windows. Please keep calm and orderly in this process of this short-term evacuation.
Keep calm and carry on.
In the next few days, a 10-kilometer exclusion zone was established and thousands more were evacuated. Within 10 days of the incident, it was increased to 30 kilometers.
Oh, my.
As hundreds of thousands of people became displaced, the world now realized the extent of this accident, and it was not minor.
No, it was huge.
By 2000, the number of people that have been permanently displaced from their homes around Chernobyl would be upwards of 350,000.
Wow.
But evacuation of the town and surrounding areas was just the start. The core remained burning.
We're gonna have
exposed.
We're gonna have to do an extended episode here.
Yeah.
No. I think we just keep YouTube Live going here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why not?
Let's take a music break.
Okay.
Because this is a great.
I know.
Now that we're
now we're in like a different. We're in the aftermath now. So this is.
And I want to hear about it.
Start.
So let's take a music break.
Okay.
And then we'll come back, and I think I'm gonna go talk to Athena.
Yeah.
And
We gotta just keep it going.
We just gotta keep it going.
I like it.
This is too much.
I'm a fan.
It's too much.
I told you there's so much. This is like barely touching the surface.
Folks, this is a double bonus episode here on Steam Lab.
Get ready to keep watching.
On VCam.
I got more to talk about.
Yeah, we're more to talk about. So here's some music, and we'll be right back.
Hello, hello.
Welcome back to STEAM Lab, Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Mathematics. And this week, it's Chernobyl. I'm your host, Engineer Phil, and across the way from me is Dr. Kyle.
Hello.
And, this is a combination of a science episode, a technology episode, and an engineering episode, and a mathematics episode.
Yeah. I figured I hadn't done one in a while. I might as well hit all the field.
Right. We
don't really
really
even
have.
have
So, geez. But I'm going to touch base real quick. Again, summer at the Media Factory. Go on the internet. Search RETN, VCAM, search 99.3 FM WBTV LP Burlington. And by the way, this episode is brought to you in part by Burlington Telecom's Lifeline program, promoting a digitally inclusive community by helping Burlington residents afford the internet tools that they need to reach their full potential. Learn more at burlingtontelecom.com. And come check out stuff at the Media Factory. All sorts of good, fun, hunky-dory things going on. And we're on Facebook, facebook.com/SteamLabVT. Posted a link. And we're still on YouTube Live. Normally it's 7 o'clock.
We stop.
We wrap it up.
We're
but-
going to keep going.
Well, it's been a while since we've been on anyways. And this is kind of like a double secret show for you on Chernobyl.
Yeah.
And, I guess the thing that's really striking me here, Kyle, because we've talked a lot about the science and technology and all this,
Yeah.
but just a quick reaction from me is that I know what happened. You know what happened.
Yeah.
Everyone that's listening knows what happened. But to hear the science put together in this kind of a story, it kind of puts you on the edge of your seat.
It really does. It's kind of a nail biter, you know.
It is, even though we already know.
And I encourage, without plugging it, everyone
HBO's.
to watch the HBO, because the HBO series is so well done. And honestly, the way that they structure it and how they format it, the last episode's kind of the big reveal of like what happened that night. And it really, like, you're almost rooting for these people not to make the mistakes they make.
Sure.
But the way that they do it and act it out and
This is
cinematograph
what
it, 'cause you're like,
actually
oh my god, like they're not gonna do it. Like he's gonna reject the outlove. Like he's not gonna press the button. But he's gonna press the button and the thing's gonna explode.
Right.
So it's really, really interesting, and it's a really, really rewarding series to watch.
Well, it's interesting too. My mother, when they came out and visited us, you and my mother had a conversation about this show, and she had mentioned that my father and her, they tried to sit down and watch this show, and they said this is a little too real.
Yeah, and it is.
I guess that's one
amazing.
warning that we can put out to folks is that, if you're in the mood to educate yourself and be interested in something, this might be for you. But if you're
Looking for any lighthearted television, don't turn it on.
yeah, if you're thinking like, I want to watch some sitcom, this ain't it. So continue with the story.
Continue with our story.
We've evacuated
We've
the area.
evacuated. We're within 2 days, right? The things exploded. We're starting to manage, right? So pretty immediately, the Soviet Union establishes a commission to investigate the accident and do damage control. And this was headed by this guy, Valery Legasov. He was the first deputy director of the Kurchatov Institute of Atomic Energy and a leading nuclear specialist. So a bunch of scientists get together. They're headed by this guy, Legasov. He's supposedly like the know-how on nuclear reactors in the Soviet Union. He's going to go manage Chernobyl and deal with the aftermath, right? So he's the guy calling the shots and organizing all of this stuff, along with other scientists that are involved. They also send this guy to work with him, this man by the name of Boris Sherbina, who is like pretty much your bureaucrat.
Well, they had plenty of those.
Yeah, they had
Soviet
plenty of those.
Union.
But so they send him to Chernobyl with Legasov, but he's going to be actually really pivotal in like getting all the resources Legasov needs to take care of this, because it starts costing tremendous amounts of money and utilizing tremendous amounts of resources to like deal with the fire and deal with the aftermath and deal with the cleanup. And this guy Sherbina is going to be like the muscle behind that action. So these are the people that are directly involved in kind of choreographing this whole dance.
And it is a dance.
Exactly.
Well, and I will tell you from my experience working for the city in public works, something as simple as just painting a line on the street for a bike lane can become a major political sacred cow for people in the city. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but let's extrapolate that out to now we have a nuclear disaster, and so now you're going to get people fired up.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's a communist country or not.
Yeah.
These bureaucrats.
So anyway, back to the story.
Sorry, go ahead.
So the town and surrounding areas have just been evacuated, right? But the core remains burning and debris remains exposed, continuously sending radiation into the air. To attempt to extinguish the fire, the Soviets began dropping tons of sand, boron, and other agents from helicopters over the reactor because they can't get close. They have to like airdrop in, just hope, like drop a bucket of sand and hope it hits the reactor core, right? Because they got to stay high above. They can't even fly directly over this thing. They're just like throwing sand into it. Tons of it.
What, like thousands of feet above this deal?
Not thousands. There's
500
actually
feet.
images of the helicopter, and there's videos of one of them crashing actually, because one of them does crash and kill a couple people.
Oh god.
Of them kind of doing this whole process. So they began dropping tons of sand and all this. And this, along with the other materials in the structure that the fuel was exposed to, led to the creation of something called corium, which is a radioactive semi-liquid material that's comparable to lava. Now, the lava at Chernobyl
Oh my god.
reached temperatures in excess of 2100 degrees Fahrenheit and began melting through the floor and into the basement. In the days after the explosion, it was realized that below the reactor lay 2 holding tanks filled with water that was used to pump the water through the core.
This is the water you were talking about earlier.
The lava was in danger of melting into these tanks. If this occurred, the water inside would instantly flash vaporize. The lava would instantly flash vaporize the water and the contents of the tanks to steam, creating an explosion like hundreds of magnitudes greater than the bombs dropped on Japan in World War II, and sending radioactive material all across Europe. This is a big problem, right?
Oh, wow.
If this stuff melts through the floor and hits these tanks, it's like Armageddon for, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's basically like Armageddon for Europe.
And we got to point out that Athena is
She's killing it with pictures.
rock star here with
So to deal with these issues, 3 men who knew the layout of the basement and where to find the valves to drain the tanks. Mind you, this is the basement underneath this exposed reactor core. These men are engineers Alexei Ananenko, Valery Bezpalov, and their shift supervisor Boris Baranov, donned protective equipment and entered the flooded basement filled with knee to waist deep radioactive water below the reactor, and managed to open the valves and drain the tanks and make it back out of the plant. So, these guys go in and supposedly, from like accounts, these 3 men literally go in what looks like scuba suits, and which is doing nothing for them.
No, you
right? And they're
you
treading
need metal.
They're
You need
treading
lead.
through water that's radioactive. They're below this core that's like dripping lava through the ceiling. Like they're looking for valves in like pitch blackness because supposedly they go in with flashlights because everything's off. And then at one point the radioactivity is so strong that the lights go out, and they're working in like pitch blackness according to their accounts. Miraculously, it was initially reported, like widely reported, that these 3 men like died almost immediately.
These guys are heroes.
For sure. I mean, they went in like literally they saved the continent in a way.
They're
because
heroes.
if the lava reached the tank and it exploded, it was like bad news bears. But they actually survived for quite a while. 2 of them are actually still alive today, with one of them passing away at the age of 65 in 2005. So that's a little silver lining.
Okay, well,
So the guys who
sort
went
of.
like below the reactor lived. In the coming months and years, thousands would be sent, conscripted, mind you. They weren't volunteered, they were told, to go to Chernobyl to work on the cleanup process. They would be known as liquidators. And between 1986 and 87, over 240,000 of them would work in the area. Today, more than 600,000 are recognized. I think it's worth noting, too, that the Soviet Union is sending these people to this radioactive place. They're not really doing a great job at protecting them.
Right.
In order to protect themselves, these people are literally like stripping lead out of reactor building 3, where they don't need it, to like bang it out into aprons and coats and
Some kind of
things,
suit.
make any kind of protection suits for the people that are going in, because they're not getting a lot of protective gear. They're not living in things. People are getting sick. People are dying. It's like a mess. But they're doing this job because in the
Right.
Soviet Union at this time, in communist USSR, you're told to do something, you do it.
You do it.
And you're doing it for country, right?
Right.
And these people knew that they needed to be doing what they were doing in order to sort of stop this whole process that was happening.
Right. Because
The
it wasn't over.
No, it was not over. It was not over when the fire stopped. When the fire stopped.
Jeez.
Their tasks ranged from removing and burying topsoil in a large radius around the reactor. So literally they had to, like, in this like huge exclusion zone radius, they had to foot by foot dig up like a foot or two deep and bury the topsoil because it's now radioactive. It's been covered by the smoke particle, right?
I mean, are they hand digging? Do
Yeah.
they have a backhoe? Or?
Well, yeah, some machinery, some by hand. It totally depends. They're exterminating any wildlife, which includes people that were literally hunting the pets kept by residents of the exclusion zone because they were told when they evacuated they could not bring their animals. And now all of these animals are breathing, drinking water, eating food. They're irradiated and they can run away. So there's people whose jobs were literally to go out and hunt down family dog Fido and, cat Tom. And they just be like, and there's accounts that are like horrifying to read of, what these liquidators faced when they're like, one of them, which, I won't go into depth with, but like one guy, there's a story of one liquidator that
find a lot of this stuff.
finds a dog and its puppies. And you can imagine what happened there because they had to do their job kind of thing. So it's like really gut-wrenching stuff these people are doing. It's not easy work. It's not pretty work. It's really brutal.
So pretty much the worst thing that you could ever imagine.
Pretty much
having
the
to do
worst
as a
thing
human
you can
being.
imagine. But now, one of the most dangerous tasks that they had to do immediately focused on the roof itself. Radioactive graphite debris remained exposed to the air. So remember, these things exploded. This graphite debris is all over the roof of this factory.
Right.
It's emitting radiation, and it's actually preventing the liquidators from getting close enough to the main reactor building to seal it off. The three main levels of the roof were colloquially named after a Soviet general's daughters, of all things. There's this general on site. I'll talk about him in a moment, but he named the roofs after his daughters for whatever reason. The smallest was dubbed Katya, and it emitted 1,000 Rontgen per hour, with 2 hours of rooftop exposure being fatal.
Well, like you said, 500, right?
500, right? So now these roofs are charged, right? They got debris all over them, some more than others. The next was named Nina, and it emitted 2,000 Rontgen per hour, with 1 hour of exposure time on this roof being the fatal dose. The final, Masha, emitted 12,000 Rontgen per hour,
So like 5 minutes, you're dead.
with the fatal dose occurring after 3 minutes.
Yeah, right. There you go.
The initial thought process to clear the roofs was to use, actually, of all things, lunar robots and police robots. So they didn't want men going up there because they were going to die.
You're just going to die.
So they're like, okay, let's get a robot on the roof. We're going to, because what they were doing was they were going to push the debris into the core and then work on the roof to cover the core, is what they had to do. Right? They had to get the stuff out of the open air, buried in the reactor building, and seal the whole thing up.
We just need to start dumping cement over
But
this stuff.
they can't because they can't even get close to it.
Right.
It's so radioactive. So the initial process is to actually use old Soviet lunar robots and police robots. However, the intense radiation, particularly on Masha, would instantly destroy any circuitry in the robots, and the attempts to clear all failed. Therefore, the Soviets enlisted what would become known as biorobots.
Men.
Men themselves were sent up to the roof in groups of about 10. Soviet General Tarakanov, who's the guy who named it after his kids, historically gave the same instructional speech to the more than 3,000 men that entered the roof in these groups of 10. Oh my God. This speech was close to, this is the best translation I can find, to what was follows. Comrade soldiers, the Soviet people have had enough of this accident. They want us to clean it up, and we have entrusted you with this serious task. Because of the nature of the working area, you will each have no more than 90 seconds to solve this problem. Listen carefully to each of my instructions and do exactly as you have been told. This is for your safety and the safety of your comrades. You will enter reactor building 3. Climb the stairs, but do not immediately proceed to the roof. When you get to the top, wait inside behind the entrance to the roof and catch your breath. You will need it for what comes next.
Oh, geez.
This is a working area. We must clear the graphite. Some of it is in blocks weighing approximately 40 to 50 kilograms. They all must be thrown over the edge here. Watch your comrades moving fast from the opening, then turning to the left and entering the workspace. Take care not to stumble. There's a hole in the roof. Take care not to fall. You will need to move quickly, and you will need to move carefully. Do you understand the mission as I have described it? These are the most important 90 seconds of your lives. Commit your tasks to memory, then do your job. So supposedly this guy said that exact same speech to every single group of people that went up to clear this roof. So throughout the summer of 1986, 3,828 biorobots worked to clear the roof. By December, the large concrete sarcophagus was completed over the reactor building. Powerful stuff.
What happened to the 3,000 guys?
We'll get there. But they didn't really track them. And supposedly, like 90 seconds was it. Supposed to be it. Like, you're on that roof. If you got enlisted to go on to, like, Masha, and you were there for 90 seconds, you were done. That was you. You'd reached your radiation limit for life.
For life.
You know? And some people apparently went on multiple times.
Oh.
And they went back, like, up to 6 to 10 times,
Oh, and
apparently.
then that's it. You're going to die. It's over.
Today, the area remains unpopulated. But you are able to visit certain areas with permission and proper permits as radiation levels have fallen.
Oh, these guys were brave.
Yeah,
man.
they were. There's some parts of Reactor 4 are still off limits and time limited. Valerian Legasov, and this is the real sad part. The Valerian Legasov and teams of scientists worked tirelessly to contain the exclusion zone. And though he was expected to be awarded and promoted, Legasov instead faced denunciation. And while he was returned to his role as first deputy director of the Kurchatov Institute of Atomic Energy, he was stripped of all titles and responsibilities and basically sent to like his desk to sit there. And his name was redacted from records of the cleanup process because when he realized what happened, he spoke out. Because the government, remember, the whole time, this Soviet system is obsessed with its image.
Right.
It's all obsessed with, it's all about image. We all got to look good. We
Can't make mistakes.
We could not make mistakes. We could not allow this to happen. We did not allow this to happen. But Legasov and these scientists realized, yeah, we did, because we knew that there was this problem. We
Right.
didn't tell anyone. We built them anyway, and we caused this reaction. This
That might have
explosion.
been the one guy with the big ego, but it was the system,
It was
too.
the system. It was a failure of the system. At the end of the day, even Dyatlov didn't know. It was a failure of the system to tell these people that this was a problem.
I mean, it wasn't just one thing. There was a chain
No.
of events.
Exactly.
As always with any of these disasters.
chain of events.
It's a chain of events. It's not one thing.
Legasov speaks out through the like trial process and through everything, and says, "Yeah, it was us. It's the government. Like it's everybody's fault. It's not just these three men's fault."
You can learn from that.
And the KGB slaughters him pretty much. They shoot him down. They strip him of everything. They take everything away from this guy. And he works in like the first like year and a half in this exclusion zone, and then is stripped totally of all responsibilities in title alone, and sends into depression. And then 2 years to the day later, he kills himself. But I'm gonna just read a wrap up here of the whole thing before we call it. We put a pin in this thing. So Valery Legasov takes his own life at the age of 51 on April 26th, 1988, exactly 2 years after the explosion. The audio tapes of the memoirs that he recorded prior to his death were circulated among the Soviet scientific community. His suicide made them impossible to be ignored. Because think about it, this is a guy that should not have killed himself. You know,
Right.
yeah, they can strip him of titles, but you have the director of this Atomic Energy Institute working in Chernobyl, and then 2 years later on the anniversary taking his own life. Like that
Right.
should not. It's a powerful statement that they couldn't ignore. So in the aftermath of his death, Soviet officials would now finally acknowledge the design flaws in the RBMK nuclear reactor. The existing reactors were retrofitted to prevent an accident like Chernobyl from ever happening again. Scientists that aided Legasov and also spoke out against the official report were subjected to denunciation, arrest, and imprisonment.
Right.
For their roles in the Chernobyl disaster, Brukhanov, Dyatlov, and Fomin were sentenced to 10 years hard labor. After his release, Nikolai Fomin returned to work at a nuclear power plant in Kalinin, Russia. Anatoly Dyatlov died of radiation-related illness in 1995 at the age of 64. The clothing of the firefighters, the first responders, still remains in the basement of the hospital in Pripyat. It is dangerously radioactive to this day. Of the people who watched the explosion on a railway bridge in Pripyat, it has been reported that none survived. It is now known as the Bridge of Death. 400 miners worked around the clock for 1 month to prevent a total nuclear meltdown. It is estimated that at least 100 of them died before the age of 40. Over 600,000 people were conscripted to work in the exclusion zone. Despite widespread accounts of sickness and death as a result of radiation, the Soviet government kept no official records of their fate. The contaminated region of Ukraine and Belarus, known as the exclusion zone, ultimately encompassed 2,600 square kilometers. Approximately 300,000 people were displaced from their homes. They were told this was temporary. It is still forbidden to return. Mikhail Gorbachev presided over the Soviet Union until its dissolution in 1991. In 2006, he wrote, "The nuclear meltdown at Chernobyl was perhaps the true cause of the collapse of the Soviet Union." In 2017, work was completed on the new safe confinement at Chernobyl at a cost of nearly $2 billion. It is designed to last 100 years. Following the explosion, there was a dramatic spike in cancer rates across the Ukraine and Belarus. The highest increase was among children. We will never know the actual human cost of Chernobyl. Most estimates range from 4,000 to 93,000 deaths. The official Soviet death toll, unchanged since 1987, is 31.
And that's not accurate at all.
Not at all. And so goes just our minute delve into the Chernobyl story.
Well, there's more to talk about.
Yeah, there's still so much more.
We should take a break.
I think we should.
Okay.
Yeah. And when we go off YouTube Live, I can play commercial music, but maybe we pull up another one of yours just in case.
I got plenty of music here. So
Perfect. All right.
Okay, here's some music, and I gotta breathe. Hello, Kyle.
Hello. Oh, are we?
Yes.
Oh.
No, you gotta. Oh, wait, hang on a second. Okay.
Perfect.
There it is. Kyle, this is for your information. Kyle, for your information, Sweden actually sent the first alert. You have to remember, 1986 was still during the Cold War. The Soviet Union didn't tell the West what was happening. Right when it happened, it was Sweden. Kyle, for your information, radiation in Chernobyl is relative. Radiation comes in many forms. In science, radiation falls on the spectrum of electromagnetic radiation. Long wavelengths are things like radio waves. Light is somewhere in the middle. Surprisingly, even very close to the main reactor, your levels of radiation can be very low. In fact, standing in the parking lot looking at the melted reactor, it's actually pretty low.
Perfect.
Kyle, for your information, nobody lives in Chernobyl. Kyle, for your information, you can still die from radiation in Chernobyl. Kyle, for your information, you can actually visit Chernobyl if you'd want to. And this is all pretty depressing information, Kyle. But this has been for your information, Kyle.
Ooh, this has been a heavy show. My God. Nice job. Nicely done.
Heavy. Yeah, like lead.
Oh, God.
I gotta breathe for a second.
I know, right?
Heavy duty stuff.
Well, this has been a good show, Phil.
I no, it's fantastic. And,
Riveting,
you know, I guess I've already mentioned it more than once, but you know, when you think of this disaster as it compares to other disasters and other situations that happen, these emergency situations, it's not just one thing.
Oh, no. And Chernobyl was definitely not. It was a series of mistakes led by, you know, one is a series of mistakes ordered by
was a
people who were in
sequence
charge
of
of the
events.
plan. A sequence of events that people pushed the reactor to a place where it was never intended to go.
It was a right.
But it's also a failure of the
management.
the system itself to not tell these people who are working on this reactor that, hey, it's got a flaw. If you do this, it's going to explode, and that's a bit of a problem. You know, so there's a lot of different things to dig into in
Right.
this thing.
So it's not even the scheduled shutdown of the reactor. Right?
No.
It was before that. It wasn't even just the test. I mean, there was this gradual lowering of the power
Yeah.
levels, the lowering of the reactor power, and then the ignoring of
All of the warning signs.
well, yeah, basically. And then another thing that I looked up here is that there was a shift change at midnight.
Yes. So they
So
started.
they got this emergency situation going on.
Well, no. So the emergency situation, it all kind of.
But it was
happened
right-
after midnight. But like
Definitely,
right at the
but
start
it was
of these guys'
still
shifts.
it was still like
Yeah.
you got these people that have been monitoring this and have like the knowledge and the information, and then there's a shift change
And then they're gone.
at midnight.
And in come the people who were never supposed to deal with this and never
Right.
supposed to run
And
this test.
like you said, there was one guy who had no experience at all and didn't know.
Then he was the one running it, pretty much,
Every-
doing it all.
And then everything happened in less than a minute.
Yeah. So,
1:23 a.m. in 4 seconds. And then by the time it was 1:24, everything it was over. It was
Yeah.
a minute. It was
yeah.
1 minute. 1 minute that this occurred.
Yeah. You know, and I mean, it's all fascinating too. You know, you can talk about what like radiation does to the body, and it's really horrifying stuff that the people who were like in the immediate vicinity of the core that night, like the firefighters, the first responders, the plant workers, like Tatanov and Akimov, kind of went through.
Sure.
And turn around.
Oh,
I think you've got
I got guests.
you've got something.
You guys can come in.
We got visitors
We
to
have
bring
visitors.
light to this depressing
Oh,
topic.
wow. Yeah, this is a very depressing topic. And I think people are here because it's Father's Day, I assume. Hi, Nora.
Happy Father's Day.
What are you? What's
Sheila,
you
just walk behind
you
you
gotta,
with
you gotta
the-
like.
yeah,
what
it's like a forest.
Is that a tomato plant? Okay.
Oh, nice.
Oh wow. And I got pretzels too.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I do. Thanks, guys. Hang on a second. Let me see this. I gotta hold this up. Oh, I have the best people in my
Wow.
life. Look at that.
Look at that.
Isn't that nice?
Oh, they do care.
I know. Well, this kind of lightens the mood. That's for sure.
You came right as we were discussing
I
just
know.
the happiest of topics.
Happy Father's Day.
Should we wait for a
Yeah.
break? Well, we missed the break. We're going.
This is great. It's perfect timing.
Perfect
actually.
timing.
This is the big one
Oh wow. Where are we going camping?
in our backyard.
Oh, we're gonna go camping in our backyard, Kyle.
Nice.
Is that where you're
I can
gonna?
have the house to myself. Or am I
that's where you're
sleeping?
gonna go.
Am I sleeping in the tent?
You're gonna sleep in the tent.
One of the two. Oh God.
I love you guys. It's
Nice.
so great.
We'll leave the snacks.
Oh man.
Thank you.
Oh wow.
Wow.
Well.
Well, I think we put a button on it. I guess to just wrap up the thought. You know.
Oh, So.
look at that.
Thank you.
Nice.
We're not gonna beat that.
No. Yeah, if we cap it at an hour and a half, then it's a good slot for TV. So we'll give it 8 minutes.
I had a question here from Chuck.
Oh,
Chuck, what did he say? Okay, so how about Moby Extreme Ways for?
Oh, that's an old question.
Oh,
Yeah.
but it's on a different thing. It's on the live stream right now.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. What does that mean?
Oh, I think he wanted that song last time.
Oh.
Yeah, we'll play it for you, Chuck. Stay tuned. We can't
Yeah.
do it yet because we can't do commercial
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Give it another 8 minutes after 7:30.
Yeah. How about a question about the Chuck? Yeah, we got fans out there.
Yeah.
How about a question about the disaster itself? There's
Yeah.
several people that are interested right
Oh, yeah.
now.
But I think what I was saying was too. I didn't talk about the actual horrific nature of radiation sickness, but
And now that we just had the
now we just had a lightning moment, and I think I can bring it up. But yeah, it's pretty terrible. What like the first responders that night went through, and what kind of the whole process is, because basically what happens is it sort of cooks you from the inside out in a way.
that's
But there's like this almost like cruel period in after the initial exposure when you've got like high dose of radiation where you actually look like you're getting better. And you can, they start functioning normally, and they actually they just kind of look like they're burned, but then, they look like they're fine. And they're like, people can be laughing and smiling.
Sure.
They look like they're recovering. And then very quickly afterwards, it deteriorates rapidly, and basically your DNA like crumbles and your organs start just like mutating beyond repair, and your skin can turn like black, and it's really terrible stuff, and they die pretty quick, and it's a really horrific kind of way to go. So that was kind of the fate of the people who were directly involved in, that's why I think it's so worthy remembering them. And, the Soviet Union, the people who were exposed, like these first responders, their bodies couldn't even be buried in a traditional way because they were so radioactive in the long term. They actually encased them in like concrete coffins and buried them in a concrete grave to just limit the exposure of those like first responders and people who immediately died because of the high levels of radiation, because they're literally the people themselves were irradiated is how radiation poisoning works. Is you take in radiation, and then if I'm exposed, I'm now radioactive to you, and you're exposed to radiation just by being around me, even if I'm miles away from where I was exposed.
This is not like scuba diving where
not-
you're on gassing and off
Yeah,
gassing.
no, it's permanent. I become a radioactive person.
It's like being pregnant.
Exactly.
You're either you got it,
You got it or you don't.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
that was kind of how the whole thing ended for at least. I think that's where the 31 come from. That the Soviet Union reported. Is that like those first responders and people who in the plant who died kind of immediately or within the first couple of weeks. And the sad part is they don't monitor the people who were in there, and also being exposed continuously during this cleanup process and getting sick and dying or getting cancer or still dying to this day, leading shortened lives because of the work they did in and around the plant, which is...
Well, and I think there was some learning for other nuclear power plants. You think of the
for sure.
Fukushima
Yeah.
in Japan?
And
that was, honestly, the Fukushima disaster in 2011, that was not... the Chernobyl was a human error and a violation of procedures.
Yeah.
Fukushima was not designed to take on a tsunami and an earthquake at the same time.
No.
That disaster was contained.
Yeah.
It was contained. So,
Yeah.
but in comparison to other radiation releases, the Chernobyl explosion put 400 times more radioactive material into Earth's atmosphere than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima.
Yeah, I think not to end on a sad note.
It was learning here.
It's a learning moment too, even in so far as the people who passed away because of the illness. Because how do you test the effect of radiation on a person?
Right.
You can't. It's unethical. It's inhumane. You can't just
Right.
say, "Oh, for our experiment today, Philip, we're gonna irradiate you until something happens to see what."
But this happened to these people.
This happened to these people, and so it was actually a really, some of our only accounts of acute radiation sickness come from Chernobyl, because hasn't been anything like this
Yeah.
in ever with that level of intensity and that level of exposure
Right.
and that level of reportable experience and interview experience of the people who suffered from this and the doctors who treated these people, and the reports of like There's something like there was a lot of reports of the first responders tasting metal in the air.
Well, sure.
Around there, right? That was a new phenomenon that is established because of Chernobyl, in that
Sure.
while highly irradiated areas will put this metal, like metallic taste into your mouth. That's all information that we learned because of the experience that these people went through.
Right.
And that's where we stand on it. So yeah, not to minimize the disaster, the casualty amount, but it did have a silver lining, so to speak, in that it was a very big learning experience in a lot of different ways. And the Soviet Union threw so much money at this thing,
Right.
that they didn't have at this point. I think that quote from Gorbachev is accurate, because also what it did was it showed the world, the USSR at this point is like obsessed with its image of power, its
Right.
image of we have everything together and we are powerful, we are strong, and we are a force to be reckoned with.
Right. And within 3 years.
And now, within 3 years, it collapses, or
Yeah.
whatever, 3 or 4 years.
1989.
Yeah,
1990.
because now the world looks at them and they say,
You can't even-
almost the greatest fault in the whole thing was that they hid it. They covered up the world's biggest nuclear disaster,
right.
and they pushed it under the rug and minimized it until
Right.
someone from Sweden figured it out.
Right.
And now the world looks at
We don't trust
the
you.
USSR and says, we don't trust you.
We don't trust
You're
you.
liars. You are not. Why should we believe you are strong and you are together and you are a threat when you lie to our face about something that endangers an
Right.
entire continent?
Your own people.
And your own people.
Right.
So I think in a lot of ways that this whole thing really just sealed the deal
On
on the
communism.
USSR.
Well, in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm not here to get into a political debate
Yeah.
on different political systems, but ultimately, communism is one that doesn't work.
Yeah. So, and there's obviously a bunch of external factors and things that were
Sure.
pushing for that collapse, but one of the big things that maybe made it happen as quickly as it did was, happened to be this disaster. I don't know. Fight me on it.
Well,
Discuss on Facebook.
Yeah.
What you think? We're happy to
it.
talk about world politics. In the time we got her on another show, because I think we're getting near. Is it about time to
Yeah,
wrap up?
this is-
We might as well button a TV episode up at an hour and a half.
yeah,
Yeah?
this seems pretty
Okay,
good.
you got some.
Oh, yeah, I just need to breathe here for a second and just
know.
kind of. Yeah,
it's
go
a lot.
ahead. We got
Okay.
some music. Whew. Oh boy. Well, we're in the Media Factory in the south end of Burlington, Vermont. This is 99.3 FM WBTV LP Burlington, streaming online at 993wbtv.org. This program was brought to you in part by Burlington Telecom's Lifeline program, promoting a digitally inclusive community by helping Burlington residents afford the internet tools they need to reach their full potential. Learn more at burlingtontelecom.com. Reach the end of another episode of SteamLam on YouTube Live and, on VCam. There's been a bonus episode, and we're still going to be on the radio. We're on for another half an hour, and we'll see you next time in the Challenge Zone.